What's up, guys? It's Justinius with another painting video. Today we're going to be working on my Hearthkyn Salvagers for Kill Team. I was fortunate enough to get a copy of Gallowfall, so I was really excited about these guys. I'm not into super OP teams, and I'm not into melee heavy teams, so these guys were definitely much more my style. I'm going to build and paint, and I'll probably play at least one game with the other team, but more excited about these guys. So these are a couple of my salvagers. I've primed them black. I've done some fancy basing stuff for them, but I'm just going to kind of show you how I'm going to paint them. This isn't a tutorial. I'm not a professional or anything like that, but you know, this is just if you like the way mine turn out and you want to paint yours that way, this is a step-by-step guide on how I'm doing it. So I'm going to start with my airbrush. I've kind of leaned more into the idea of getting my initial base layers down with the airbrush and then moving into hand brushing later. You don't have to do that. You can just base coat and do some blending and stuff like that. It's not terribly difficult. I just don't have a lot of time, so this is the way I'm doing it. So we're going to start with Payne's Gray. This is the Pro Acryl version. I think I actually do prefer the Liquitex version just a little bit, but this isn't bad. It's going over black, so the idea here is I'm doing more of, you'll see. I'm experimenting here with these guys, so I want to take just a little extra time with these, make them look nice. So we're going to start with black undercoat. We're going to do a Payne's Gray all over the entire model, and then we'll see how they highlight up from there. So let me go ahead and get this first little bit down. I've already lost the model. How did that happen? Oh, there he is. So there you go, like a nice deep dark navy. You want to carry that across the entire army. And when it's dried, I've done all but a couple of them, it'll look something a little closer to this. Darkens down a little bit, not overly shiny, nice and matte. And then I'll show you what the next step is in just a minute. Okay, so kind of hard to see right now, but if you've watched any of my other videos recently, you'll see that I like to marry the colors in the airbrush cup. So what I've done is I've sprayed all the Payne's Gray. I didn't clean my airbrush. I went ahead and took some dark purple. We just put that in the cup with what was left of the Payne's Gray, married those colors together, put a little bit more flow improver in there. And what I'm going to do is I could very easily just be like, alright, I'm going to highlight one side one way, highlight the other side the other way. It's not quite like a dual OSL effect, but I want to create the impression that these models are in a dark environment, and I want there to be a contrasting light coming from one direction. So the idea that I'm going to follow with these guys is if any of the models are not centered on their base, I think there's only one or two that are pretty good, centered pretty well, but this guy's standing a little bit off to this side. What I want to do is I want to create the impression that there's a little bit of light hitting the back of this guy, like he's walking by like a console or something, and the console is lighting up his back. And then the opposite side, I'm going to do not like a bright highlight, but I'm going to use my main colors and stuff like that and focus all of that effort and energy painting in that area. So what I'm going to do is, like I said, this guy's leaning a little bit off the side of the base. I'm just going to grab from below. I've mixed that dark purple in here. What that's going to do, I'm going to kind of make this like a straight up shadow color. So we're going to like anti-zenithal. But then I want to focus a little bit just kind of on this back corner here. So something like that. So on this side, if you're looking at him from this angle, he's pretty much still Payne's Gray. But if you look at him from this side, he's like a dark purple. And we're going to use this to nurture some other colors up. So let me go ahead and get the rest of the squad done up like this, and then we'll go ahead and step into the next color. Alright, so here's what a couple of those look like. The purple fades in quite nicely with the back, and then using it as an anti-zenithal also lets it be our kind of like universal shadow color. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take, and in the same fashion, I dumped the last little bit of paint out of the pot, and I mixed in some more flow improver, and we're going to do burnt red this time. And we're just going to focus this on that little section where that additional light source is coming from. So I'm just going to kind of grab right back here. Now we're doing two things here. The first thing is we were nurturing up that red, so we're not going straight from a dark blue to a red. We went from dark blue to purple to like a kind of a deep maroon, and then we'll come in and like pop in a little bit of red on top of that. But when you look at the model from this angle, you just see the normal colors. When you look at it from this specific angle or from the side a little bit, you get that impression that something is lighting this guy from the back. And that's all we want, is that small little bit. We don't need to go too crazy. You want to make sure that you hit whatever elements you want to hit and just kind of leave it alone. You can tidy it up with a brush later. Now we might come back and pop this just a little more, but I think this is roughly where I'm going to leave this highlight. So I'm going to show you one more time. Let's grab this guy. Now I kind of broke some of my rules on a couple models, and this is why I'm doing this other model here. This specific model is probably going to have an OSL glow because he's got a plasma gun. So I'm going to do a little bit of an OSL here. So I put the the opposite highlight completely opposite to that. Just like last time, we're just going to slowly nurture that color up. Something like that. There we go. So once that dries down, I'll have a much better idea how I want to proceed with it. But I'm going to go ahead and finish these guys up, and we will come back in a minute. So here's what we look like dry. Again, we got that purple anti-zenithal. We turn it around and we turn red. Very cool. I think it looks great. So we've cleaned the airbrush completely. I do think I want to push the red just a little more. But before I do that, so I know how much I want to push it, I'm going to start working on the other end of this effect. So what I'm going to do is I've put some glaze medium, I've done some flow improver, and we've done dark jade. We're going to work the other side of this. Got a little bit of that going on in there. Nice and transparent. So what I want to do is I want to kind of start this effect up high. So we're coming up like that. And we're going to work opposite that glow effect. So we're going to hit it like it's a zenithal. Now this is going to, again, do two things. Number one, it's going to establish our base coat. But number two, it's going to be our main color. It's going to use that zenithal undercoat to, let it do its thing. And it's going to sit kind of transparent over top of the Payne's Gray that we put down before. Now, how far over you take this is up to you. I'm probably just going to do like that because I want a little band of that purple and that Payne's Gray on both sides of the effects so that I can have plenty of room to work in my actual highlights. So I'll show you one more time just what I mean by that. So here's our highlight with the red. Spin it around the complete opposite, and like a zenithal, we're just going to do like the exact same thing. We're just going to create that little band of that teal color. And we're just going to push it over here just a little bit. Push it over here just a little bit. And that should be good, because you still have that little line of that purple and that Payne's gray. It still gets where it needs to be. It actually got a little bit further than I wanted it, but that's okay. It's just like one little detail. So just be careful, work your way around, and we'll be back. Okay, so there's what our first highlight looks like. We still got that red coming through. I'm pretty happy with this, but we're going to push it just a teeny bit further. So just like in previous fashion, we're going to marry that dark jade with some regular jade, and we're going to thin this down a lot. You want it to be pretty transparent, but it's still going to have a little bit of opacity to it. And we're pretty much going to focus this on that central band completely opposite our highlight. So just kind of a little pop color. Just like that. You don't need much more than that. If you want to, you can feather it out a little bit on the sides, but really, you just want that pop in the middle. So one more for you. Okay, and we'll be back. So here's where we're sitting with that highlight kind of starting to dry a little bit, turn to the red. I've gone ahead and I married in just a little bit. It doesn't look like just a little bit, but just a little bit of that pale yellow. Instead of going to bright jade, we did pale yellow. And this one I'm going to kind of hit a little bit closer to the top, and I'm going to focus it towards roughly where I want the center of that highlight to be. So just one little pass, and that's all we need. That actually might be too much. Yeah, I don't like that. So we're gonna undo that. We're gonna do pretty much just the jade. I think that's what I'll do, is I'll just do pure jade and redo that. So I'll be back when I do that. Okay, so what I did is I cleaned the airbrush cup out. I put a bunch of jade in there. I put one drop of that pale yellow. That looks much better. So here's what this is going to look like in action. We're just going to, again, just kind of hit that kind of peak, and that's all you need, just that little bit. And then I will show you one or two more. Alrighty, so here's where we left off. I took a little break and went and spent some time with my family. This is where we left things though. That last highlight really popped the way I wanted to. While I was away, I realized that normal Votan are, in this color scheme, the trans, I think it's the Transurian, trans something. It's the teal guys. I think the normal dudes are supposed to be white with like teal accents, and then the leader is the reverse. So, whoops. But I like this better, so I'm gonna keep doing it. For my last red highlight, I really like how this looks. Like it's got like a really warm, but like distant warm kind of feel to it. I'm just gonna take red, and then a little bit of that dark red, and I'm just gonna pop that in right here, just real softly, and hopefully it doesn't blow things out too much. So just like that, that's perfect. That'll be enough. And again, for some reason my settings are So yeah, there we go. So now once we get the rest of these done, we're going to switch over to brush, and we're going to try and not destroy all this work that we've done. It shouldn't be too bad. I think the hardest part is going to be this specific guy, actually, getting his arms the right way, because the light itself isn't blue. So I could have just left it this way and had like a blue light, but that's not what I want. So we're going to paint his arms and stuff like that. We're going to do I've got an idea for a cheat way to kind of do his legs, so we'll see if that works out. But yeah, so we'll be back. Well, this is where things are. Ignore that little matte varnish thing. I'm using that to seal a gap. We've dried down. I think it's still nice and neutral. It's got a little bit more punch to it, but that's fine. Like I said, we just don't want to push it too far. So, taking a brush, we're going to work on the pants next. Now, the hard part of the pants is going to be around this little glow effect. But for the biggest chunk of work as far as the pants go, I've got dark neutral gray and warm gray on my palette, and then I also have like an intermediary between them. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just kind of block in my shadows first using the darker color, and then I'm going to block in my highlights with the brighter color, and then I'm going to use my intermediary or some wet blending or something like that, and we're just going to kind of blend those together and make it a little bit more seamless. Now, while I said that I want this model to exist in a darker environment, that doesn't mean that there's zero color in this environment. And we will probably do a little bit of work to kind of reestablish shadows and stuff, or the impression of shadows later, maybe. We'll see how it goes. I think I'll just go ahead and grab that like that. Yeah. Alright, so from here, I'm going to just go ahead and jump to the warm gray. Remember, warm highlights, so everything that's teal but will be that pants color is going to get the warm gray. Now this is probably a little aggressive, but that's okay. We're going to work with our extreme highlight, and then we'll kind of use some stuff to dial it back a little bit. Just keep it in like the most extreme areas. And in fact, if I wanted to, I could just kind of, I mean, I guess this is like the extreme highlight. This is where like most of my light is coming from. So you know, just pop it around where you want it. And then, like, one of the good guidelines you can use is if you see the red where the model is now, and you don't see any gray, you're fine. And then if you turn it and you see like the dark color or the light color, whatever, you know, just grab some highlights. So any cloth that you see when you turn it this way, in the extreme anyway, I'll put a little, like a little highlight here. But yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to blend these a little bit, but that's okay. That's kind of the name of the game. So yeah, I mean, it's not like like the most foolproof method for plotting highlights and stuff, but it will get the job done. I think it'll be fine. Now you might have to, if you're anything like me and you don't plan these things ahead and you're just kind of winging it, you know, probably a little back and forth going to happen, but that's okay. You know, I do this because I enjoy it, so kind of a no-brainer for me to just kind of keep painting until I figure it out, until I'm happy with it. And that's usually what I do anyway. I don't give myself like a hard boundary that, like, you know, things have to be like perfect or a certain way. I just go until I like them, and then that's when I stop, or until they frustrate me. I don't believe in letting a project of any kind not be fun. If it's not fun for me, then I'm just not going to do it. So I'm going to keep pushing this back and forth until I like it. We'll see how long that takes. Hopefully not too long, because I have 10 of these guys to do. I'm actually way happier with that mid-tone than I thought I would be. So mix your intermediary color. It'll be nice. So alright, so here's one of the models with the next step done. It's kind of subtle, you can't really see it a ton. So what we're going to do is we're going to take your model, you're going to fine point brush, and we're going to take that dark purple and we are going to thin it down a little bit, get a nice tip on your brush. And the first thing I like to do is I like to go from underneath. I like to grab all these extreme shadows on the armor plates. It's kind of like a excuse me. It's kind of like an anti-edge highlight. But basically what we're doing is we're using purple, which is a very cool color, and we're making like chromatic shadows, I guess would be the best way to put it. So anywhere where there's still a little bit of that Payne's gray, or one of those darker colors sitting in there, this one's gonna be hard to get. You're just gonna pop that in there, and you probably won't even ever see it. But should you ever tilt the model back, you'll see like a very strong purple. Now you will see it on the other areas where you have, remember when we were airbrushing, we left that tiny little band of that dark color. You just kind of want to poke it in there. Don't put it where there's red, but just put like a little band of it near those dark colors. And you don't even really have to blend it, because when it dries it'll kind of blend itself a little bit, depending on what paints you're using. But I like the hue of this, and I think it works really well with the colors we've chosen. But yeah, I mean that's kind of the big thing. Another place I'm going to hit is like right here on these little ridges around the helmet. If there's any dark areas in there, I'm going to just drop it in there. Yeah, so not a ton of work, just a little bit. I'm also going to use this to cover some of my crimes where my airbrush decided it was going to make a mess. Yeah, something like that. Alright, so we'll be back. Okay, so I think my next order of business is I'm going to do the elbow pads and knee pads. And for those I'm using Payne's gray and the dark neutral gray. So towards the tops, I think I'm going to do the dark neutral gray. And then at the bottoms, unless it's in red, I'm just going to do Payne's gray and blend it in. So just something a little darker, a little deeper, but it's not like a full black. And then what I can do later is I can put washes on that to pull that little bit of molded detail out. Same thing with the elbows. This one's a little bit covered in red, so we'll just put that Payne's gray on there. And then I'm just going to kind of blend that down, just kind of push it down a little bit. That'll be alright. So, carry that on throughout the model. I'm not sure what color these are supposed to be, so I'm just kind of winging it at this point, making, you know, my own decisions as far as like what I think is going to look good or not going to like pull too far from the model. Now if these are supposed to be, or if you want them to be the same color as the armor, you could just kind of reinforce that color a little bit using those armor colors, but I think that's what I'm going to do. I think I'm also going to do this with the toes. I think that'll be a nice way to kind of tie all that together, but not have it be too samey. So like the whole top of this foot here, and I guess the front. And then what I'll do is I'll shove some of that Payne's gray back in the corners, like back there. Something like that. And then I'll paint like the sole of the shoe, either Payne's gray or black. But yeah, that's kind of the idea I'm going for here, is nice dark extra bits. I just want the armor to be that real bright, but I also want everything to have, like, I guess, an identity, if that makes sense. Something like that. Yeah, that looks good. Alright, so I'm going to carry this on around the rest of the team, and then we'll be back. Okay, so I went back and I did all of the little ribbing and stuff around the pants and cloth and stuff like that. I did Payne's gray, and then the dark parts I just hit with like a black. It's pretty much just the bottoms. I also did the little wires, anything that wasn't red. So now we're going to add 2 new colors to the palette. We're going to add black brown and dark umber. And this is pretty much going to be what we use for all of our leather. So we're going to start with that black brown, and we're just going to put that anywhere where there's no teal or anything that's basically not receiving that highlight. So pretty solid chunk of this. Now whether or not we're in light or shadow or whatever, we will use a little bit of highlight just to create the impression that, you know, some of this leather has been scratched up a little bit, and then we'll probably have to add like a highlight color to the rest. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to strategically kind of place my shadow colors around, and then we'll highlight from there. So not a ton going on this guy. It's pretty much just his belt. He's got like this one little pouch here, and that'll be that. So I'll work my way around the rest of the minis. Alright, so once you have kind of base coated all of your browns and stuff, I use the same method. I use 2 tones of brown, a dark one, a light one, so that I could do my highlights and my shadows. I just want to kind of bring some of that original feel back into the model. So what I've done is I've taken, in this case, transparent purple, but you could just thin down a regular purple to a glaze. If you don't have access to that, you can use purple wash and just kind of apply in a controlled manner. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to kind of glaze that purple up into my shadow areas. I've thinned, this is the transparent purple, but I've thinned it down quite a bit, and I just want that to rest where my shadows are. You can kind of do a little bit of outlining and stuff with it. You don't have to go too crazy. This is probably a little bit more intense than I need it to be, but when it dries it will kind of neutral itself out a little bit. It won't be so aggressive, but I do want it to be a little bit visible. Now, contrary to what I'm doing, multiple layers of this will probably, you know, lighter layers, multiple light layers will probably do you more favors than not. But I'm this is kind of like a, you know, I'm ready to be done with this particular step. I was initially worried with the way the brown was going to look compared to everything else, but after letting it sit and dry overnight, I am quite pleased with it. So all worries have been, I don't know the word I'm looking for. I'm not worried about it anymore. Now you can also use this to kind of reinforce your shadows a little bit if you have some areas where you maybe have some concerns with the shadows looking the way you want them to. I'm trying not to go too crazy here, but I also want to make sure that I'm putting this in my shadows so that you can tell that it's there. And then the reason I'm using transparent is because I have access to it, and I don't want to layer like an opaque purple over top of everything. Even like for me, I think again, I have access to this, so for me it just makes sense. But if you don't have this, Druchii Violet would probably work really well. But yeah, I'm just kind of trying to be a little more subtle with what I'm putting on here, and I know the transparency will help me achieve that. So here's what a finished one looks like. Let's grab like the leader. Did I do it on him? I might not have. I don't think I got him either. There we go. This one definitely got it. So, you can see like back here on these, under here on the holster on his pistol, stuff like that. So that is pretty much the base colors for the model for the most part. There's obviously a couple more things I need to do with a couple of the models, but like I think that if you wanted to, you can kind of block in the majority of these weapons, and then it's time for metallics. So what I am going to do is I'm going to do all of my guns, I think, in Payne's Gray, just because I want that to read as like the darkest color on the model, and it's dark enough that I think that I could get away with using it as a black on weapons. I'm also going to do like the little rings around these canisters or whatever, and then we'll jump into, I also need to paint flesh, so I'll show you how I paint flesh, but I might actually save that for later. I think I'm going to use this guy as a tester to figure out if my method's going to work the way I want it to, and then we'll go from there. But yeah, so then I'll show you how I'm going to do metallics next. So once I black out all the guns, so Payne's Gray or black, whatever you want to use. Alright, so here's kind of what I landed on for my guns. In this light, or at least on the camera's viewfinder, it doesn't look like what I'm trying to make it look like. It's only when you see the shoulder pad maybe that it'll come across, but I wanted to create the impression that some of the gun casings, really just the plasma gun, but I also wanted to do the shoulder strips. So I wanted them to be like a white, but in that darkened light, so we pulled it down to like a medium gray, and then we used that purple to kind of pull things back into the shadows. And this is, I think it looks good on the gun casing, I think it looks good on the shoulder, so I'm going to show you how I'm doing that. I'm only using two colors. I'm using dark purple and warm gray. I've got pure colors, and then I've got like an intermediary just in case. So what I do is I'll take the purple, and I'll kind of go kind of heavy, and I'll put that towards like my shadow, and I'll pull it into the shadow. And then I'll grab that gray, and I'll kind of do the opposite, but I won't start in my highlight. I'll start just outside of it, and I'll pull into that purple and like wet blend it, and then I'll pull it back so that purple starts to mix into that gray. And then I'll wipe my brush off. I don't clean it completely, I just wipe it off. That way there's still a little purple in there. And I grab the extreme highlight, and then if you need to, you can just kind of dip it in the purple and then sort of work somewhere in the middle. You'll come up with your own kind of workflow for this, but there is a little bit of shadow on this curve, so I'm just going to put a little bit of that purple into that. And I think I just did that whole thing off camera, so I'm going to do it one more time. This one's a little bit brighter, so we're going to start with the highlight. You can do it either way. I'm going to put most of this right here. You want the paint a little thicker and a little wetter than normal, because we're not going for like a couple thin layers to build up a nice smooth coat. We want the transition. That's more important. So then we dip that in the purple. We get that kind of intermediary, and then we are going to work that transition in to the gray. And then we're going to go back into the purple. Now, I am going to clean my brush off now. I'm going to go back into the pure purple, and I'm just going to kind of hit this shadow here and just kind of pull that towards the back. And that should, hopefully, be a nice, pretty smooth transition when it dries. Now it might be a little intense here. If you're not, satisfied with the way that looks, you just clean your brush off, keep it nice and moist, and then with no paint on the brush, just kind of work those transitions in a little more. So now I think there is going to be another layer to this, just because it does read a little bit more like the shoulders are purple to me. So I'm going to use transparent white. I'm not sure if there's an alternative to this. So recommendations would be maybe thin down a little white, add it to your mix, and just kind of like work with it. If I don't think glazing white is the greatest idea, but yeah, maybe if you want to try it. But I'm essentially going to use this like a glaze. So I'm just going to put one little drop of this on the palette. We're going to grab one of the guys that's dry. So plasma gun here. I'm going to thin this down a pretty good bit. And somehow some of that purple got in there. That's okay though. And we are just going to kind of glaze that over to our highlight from the mid-tone or the shadow maybe. Yeah, that looks good. I'm actually okay with that. So maybe a white glaze isn't the worst idea. Just get like a dirty amount of paint on your brush that's purple, or you can use like a light purple, and just kind of make sure there's just the teeniest little bit of purple incorporated into that, and then thin that down to a glaze and push that to your extreme, to the top. There we go. So something like that. Yeah, that'll look much nicer. That reads a little bit closer to white, so I'm okay with that. Now again, we don't want to go to pure white. Now you can use that glaze because it's going to be a little bit more transparent, but that's what I'm doing for the shoulder pads and just a couple of the gun casings. So I'll be back. Alrighty, so my transparent white experiment may have gone wrong, but that's okay. We'll adjust it later. So for the time being, what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply some gloss varnish. I've thinned it down on my palette. I'm just going to put it over the shoulders, which I also found out as I've been doing these, that I didn't even have to actually paint my shoulders this way. So I could have just left them the teal, but that's alright. It's already done. We're going to keep it. So this is in preparation for the decals. Basically what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a little gloss varnish wherever I want my decals to be, and yeah, we'll come back and I'll show you some decal tricks. Alright guys, so I've gone ahead, I've put another layer of clear white over everything. I think the transparents, or at least this transparent specifically, reactivates paint. Oh boy, my son's awake. Alright guys, so here's what our model looks like. I think I've made a slight discovery with the transparent paints. I actually think the transparent paints reactivate layers underneath them. As I was putting I put a second layer of transparent paints on, and I noticed it started to pull some of that purple back up. So I'm not sure what the deal is with that, but we've gone ahead, we've glossed over it. I'm just going to let it be as it is. Maybe I'll be able to adjust it later, but I'm not too worried about it right this second. So we're going to go ahead and do some decals. So when I'm doing decals, I'm going to zoom this out a little bit. What I like to do is I take a plate, I put some paper towel on it. This is like 3 of those little half sheets, and then I fold it over, I wet it. This is what I put my decals on. So when I'm doing decals, I will take all the decals I know that I'm going to be using. So these are the ones for the sub-faction that I painted these guys in. And I'm just going to set that on the paper towel. I'm going to poke it down, and I'm just going to make sure that it started to get that water. Now what I'll do is I will kind of go along, specifically with Warhammer models, I will kind of move along the sheet as I start, waiting for this, and I'll start thinking about what decals I might need or want. So I don't know too much about these guys. I know these larger decals, like this big one, I'm probably not going to use this on anything, although it would make a pretty neat base decoration. I think I'm going to use maybe this this white and red here on the gun, so I'm going to go ahead and cut that out. And basically I'll kind of work my way along as I'm waiting for the decals to be ready. That way I've got all my decals sitting, they're wet, and whenever I'm ready to go ahead and grab those, I've got them at my disposal. Now, also with that, most of these guys aren't getting decals outside of a number and the faction decal. My gunners, I think, will be the big ones here. So a little something like that. And actually, I think I'm going to cut out both of these. And then the number decals. Now I'm going to do the number decals separate, just because I don't think I'm going to give everybody the same number. I don't have any interest in starting like a Votann army, so I'm not really pressed on like making sure their squad marking and stuff and all that's correct. I just want the league icon to be present. So now that we've got that straight, we're going to need a couple things. These will sit as long as this paper's wet. You can probably just leave this. It doesn't really matter. You're not really in a big rush. I use a pair of tweezers. I use my hobby knife, a couple Q-tips, and then if you want to go extra hard, you can use the Microset, Microsol, or the Mr. Setter, Mr. Softer. I'm just going to use Mr. Setter. They're basically the same thing. The difference is this has more of the glue or setting solution. This has more of the melting solution, but they both do the same thing. They both have the same ingredients, but like as you can see, this one's more clear, this one's more white. This has more of what makes the decal stick to the surface. Now this will dry clear, so don't worry about that. And I'm pretty sure Microset and Microsol are basically the same situation. You can use these interchangeably, or you can use them together. But I have found that however much of whatever is in Mr. Softer tends to attack the surface a little bit more of your paint jobs, so bear that in mind. So I'm going to scoot this up a little bit more so we can see what we're doing. I like to kind of tip my model into a position where I can just access it. Now I know you can't see that. Let me So something like that. I just kind of tip him over on his side. Now I'm a lefty, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this whole decal sheet, I'm going to grab it, something like that. And then I'm going to open up my mark softer. I'm just going to put a very small dot of it right there where that decal is going to go. Take my knife, and using the back end of the knife, I'm just going to go ahead and slide that decal right here where I want. Now you can put that back on there and start working the decal itself. So once you get it where you want it, this is super straightforward. I'm just going to let it sit for a moment, and then we're going to place this Q-tip gently on it, roll it one way, place it back, roll it the other way, and just make sure that there's no like bubbles or anything. This should this is like a relatively flat surface, so that's concerning. That should be that, like real simple. It stays right on there. Now for the gun, yeah, same deal. I think that'll fit there. I'm not really sure. You know what, let's cut out another one just in case, because I do want to put like something on the gun here. I'm just not really too sure what to do, so let's go with this. And then we'll move over to another model real quick while we wait for that to open up a little bit. Let's grab the punchy guy, because he does not have anywhere to place on his shoulders. So what we're going to do for this guy is I'm going to use his leg. So same deal, kind of prop him up, slap that right there, and then just real gently, real carefully, you don't need any pressure at all, just slide that decal over. Now I've seen people pick these decals up like just with the tweezers, and I don't know how you guys have it in you to do that, because once this decal folds or flips or anything like that, it's done. So there we go. Got that like on his thigh, and then I'll probably put like the number, if I can fit it, I'll probably put it on like his knee or something, or you know, we'll figure something out for that, maybe. Now another thing is with this particular one, where I've put it, it's actually sitting, it's overlapping on the belt, so I'm going to go back in and paint that belt detail just a little bit more, just to kind of create the impression that it's underneath the belt. But yeah, so that's how I do my decals. Now if you want, you can put another layer over the top of this. Like I said, these are basically interchangeable. You could throw mark softer over the top, you can do microsalt, doesn't really matter. And that should get you a pretty good decal as far as it's sitting and adhering to the surface goes. If you have any bubbles, just let it dry. Poke it a couple times with a needle or the point of your knife, wherever that bubble might be. If it's like cloudy or whatever, apply another layer of softer or setter over the top of that. It should moisten it down and then smooth itself out. So, and if you have a more curved surface, just mess with the decal. It'll eventually lay down. You just have to like cautiously keep messing with it. So there's my decal tips for you. Okay, so all of our decals are dry, our matte coat and stuff is dry. What we're gonna do now is I'm gonna start working on flesh. So
Dad, do you know where the googly eyes are?
I have no idea. They are probably in your Play-Doh stuff.
What do you mean? The googly eyes on the dog, you mean? No, I'm not.
Okay, so all of our decals have dried. I've put a matte coat over everything. We're kind of reaching the finish line as far as like matte colors go before we start doing metallics, and then after metallics we'll do any other additional OSL effects we want to do. So what I'm going to do is I've taken dark flesh and tan flesh. I'm not going to use the pure tan flesh right away, but just like every other step we've done so far, I'm going to layer my dark flesh underneath in all my like really dark places. So anything that's still that blue is going to get that dark flesh, and then everything that's not red is going to receive tan flesh. Or, well, a 50-50 mix of dark and tan flesh. The reason I did this is because I feel like it's too much of a jump on its own, and then I'm probably going to wash this down a little bit with a flesh wash of some sort, and then come back and just re-highlight everything, and that's where I'll use maybe not pure tan flesh, but a higher concentrated version of it. Don't forget to get the hands. This is, I think, one of the only guys in the entire team who just has bare hands. And so that's the dark part, and it looks pretty convincingly dark, which is good. That's what we want. And then our highlights are going to be not much brighter, but they are going to be brighter. So we want that nice kind of step-in contrast there. Just grab the tops of everything. As long as you really hit the areas that are going to be visible from above, and like straight on. You don't have to like get all the way down his armpits or anything like that, but you do want to put as much of that color down as you can. Just go ahead and grab all that, and if you notice you missed anything, just leave it for now, and then we'll come back with that shadow color and just kind of tidy up. Now I can also do this with the face if I really wanted to, of the dudes that I have heads on right now. There's only I think like 2-3 dudes that have helmets, and only one of them has like a face that needs to be painted. Yeah, I've got 2 dudes with heads. So what I could do for him is kind of follow the same principle. So we're going to start with that nice dark color, and I really didn't choose a helmet / arm combination that was going to do me any favors here. Fortunately, it's pretty straightforward. Paint one side of his face with the shadow, and then the rest of the face with the highlight. And then once that dries, we'll go ahead, maybe put another layer on that. But put a wash down, and then try our best to highlight all that. But this, I think we're gonna have more success here and on the other heads that we have otherwise omitted. So just bump those colors up as best you can. Get them nice and close to your shadow areas. If you want to make little blends, you can do that. I'm just kind of doing this as simply as I can, because it's not that I don't want to fuss too much over it. Like, I want it to look good, obviously, but I also want to find that balance between like getting these guys ready for the table and getting them on the table, and like creating something presentable in a decent time frame. So once this dries, I really like the way that dark flesh kind of blends into the red. That's actually really cool. Basically what I think I'm going to end up doing is kind of using that mid-tone mix to sort of what am I looking for here? To sort of brighten the shadow areas, and then move into a more intense mix, I guess, for the remainder. You know, something a little darker than the base, but not as extreme as what we've got. Yeah, something like that. So I'm gonna wash this down, or I'm gonna come back when this is dry, and then I'll wash it down. So here we go. Just I don't think this is all the way clean. Yeah. We're gonna take just that Hearthkyn flesh shade, and we're just gonna wash over the entirety of the arm. Now I went real heavy so that I could pull it around and put it wherever I want it. And then if there's any areas that are pooling, like here in this little bicep, just grab that, put it somewhere else. Grab that, put it somewhere else. You don't want any strong areas like that. Now where we laid down like a weird style base coat, it might be hard to notice this immediately, especially in the dark areas. That's fine. You don't have to wash the dark areas as much. Again, because of the nature of how we're doing this. So there's our wash pretty much. Didn't really take too much. Again, if there's areas of pooling, you just scoop it up and move it to a new area. Alright, and while that's drying still, I went ahead and I thinned down some transparent purple, and I'm pretty much just going to wash this anywhere where I want to create lines. Okay, so while those washes are drying, I went ahead and thinned down a bunch of transparent purple, and what I'm going to do here is I'm basically just going to use this to fill in gaps where I think that there could be a little bit more color. I'm going to use this to wash down in between, like where two materials meet, so like where the holster meets the pants, where the belt meets the pants, stuff like that. You can also further reinforce any of those shadow areas that we did earlier. You know, this is a good time to do this because, you know, we're kind of finalizing things, and while you're waiting for washes, instead of just sitting around waiting for the wash, let's do something. So I'm just going to move this wash around, put it places where I want it to go, and then hopefully by the time I'm done with this, the other wash will be dry. So carry on. Alright, now we're ready for flesh highlights. So we're going to mix, again, the brighter version of that last highlight. We're going to just use that to kind of pick out anything that's upwards facing and meant to be a highlight. Just take your time. It doesn't have to be perfect, but the more time you spend working on this, the better it will look, obviously. We're going to avoid those deep recesses. We're going to let the anywhere where it's settled be settled, and once we finish this section, I know there was a tiny bit of highlighted skin over here, not a whole lot. Then I'll move to the darker tone and highlight that. And I think this is going to help me create an easier map than if I were to do it the other way around. And then if you want to further highlight this should be a good enough roadmap that you can do it all separately in any way that you want. But this is just my workflow here, so if you want to do it the other way, go for it. Just find a way that works best for you. And then we'll take that previous layer to the other one, and we can do that like this. and then you can even run that a little bit into that previous tone, and it should blend pretty nicely just on its own with minimal effort from you. Now, as for this side where there's the red, I think I can kind of see where my lines stopped, so I'm just going to try my best to sort of highlight this and leave that red in place. The tone that I put down previously should, kind of do me some favors, but don't sweat it if you go into the red a little bit. Something like that. So if you want to keep pushing that, go for it. I actually think that looks pretty good. It blends decently. It's obviously not a perfect blend or anything like that, but I think it's kind of pronounced enough where it needs to be, and it blends enough that, especially just on the tabletop, this isn't for display or competition or anything like that, obviously. I think it'll look fine. So, arms done. So let everything dry, give it a matte coat if you want. I'm probably not going to. These paints are matte enough on their own. But once everything is nice and dry, we're going to start working on metallics. Alrighty, so it's been a couple days, so you're going to have to bear with me here. Oh, let me readjust my focus real quick. Sorry about that. Maybe. Okay, so it's been a teeny little bit since I recorded the last part of this video, but we're going to try and wrap this up, hopefully, for me today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by base coating all of my metallics. Now, what I recommend, I've probably said this already, but recommend going in, doing any decal work. So that's usually requires a gloss coat unless you're confident in the smoothness of your paint job. Do a gloss coat. Let it dry, do your decals, let it dry, matte coat, let it dry. Even if you just do the area where the decal was, it's going to have a much higher success rate if you do it over a gloss coat. This is where we're sitting right now with a couple of our guys. I'll just show you a few examples of what things look like. I'm pretty happy with them. I'm still not the most in love with this purple, but it's there and I don't want to redo a whole bunch of this stuff, so I'm just going to kind of leave it and hope that at the end it all comes together. The only ones that concern me the most, funny enough, are both of my gunners. This one, he needs some white up here on top of his gun, and this one needs some purple on his decal. But other than that, I'm pretty content for the most part with the way everything looks. I have to pick a color for this bedroll, but that's not near anything metallic, so I'm not too stressed about it. I'll figure it out when I get to it. But what we're going to worry about right this second is metallic details. So every single one of your space dwarves, your Votan, as they would be, should have a little carabiner. So I'm going to paint all of that except for that little piece. I think I might leave that green, but I might paint that a different color, maybe black or orange or something like that. But everything but the clasp. You can paint the whole thing if you want. That's fine. And then most of your dudes should have backpacks with these little tubes. So I'm going to paint the tubes. I'm using a nice dark metallic. Now this, I've already expressed in other videos, these are not my favorite metallics, but they're perfect for this. So dark silver is what I'm going with, just because, again, it's nice, it's dark. That's what we want. And I'm just basically blocking in all my metallics dark, and the idea here is I'm going to work from darkest to lightest. So this has a really, really nice, wonderful dark tone to it, and it'll be really easy to highlight up from that. So we're just going to grab everything that is metallic. We're going to grab this belt buckle. Another thing I do like about these metallics is their coverage is fantastic. All of my issues with these metallics has to do with my personal preference as far as their tone goes. I think their tone is a little too similar. They're all just kind of like variants of silver, and sometimes I want just a little more variety than that, but there's nothing wrong with them. I don't want to create the impression that they're bad. They're just not to my liking. That's not where I wanted that. I will repaint that later. So we're going to grab the bottom of the gun. Now, I'm going to follow the same rules as before. For now, I'm going to leave everything that's red, red. I might come, well, obviously there's no might. I'm definitely going to come back and repaint that. But I want to finish the rest of the gun first, and then I'll come back and I'll do like whatever I want to do with the metallics. I'm leaning towards applying a dark metallic and then like a clear red over top, but I haven't decided yet. So if you want to paint this now, if you're confident that you'll remember where all those red shinies go right on ahead, but I'm going to wait and do those later. Another thing is I'm going to grab these little circular details, and you don't want to go outside the lines too much, as long as you don't touch like the actual armor. If you get like inside that little crevice there, that's fine, not the end of the world. But just try not to, like where I got like a little dot there, that'll be easy to fix, but you know, you don't want it anywhere else. So that's pretty much all the metallics on this guy. So let those dry. We'll come back, hit them with a nice wash, and then we'll start layering them up where we want to layer them up, if you want. Alrighty, so what we're going to do now is we're going to take, I took 3 drops of Pro Acryl's Black Wash. I just mixed in 1 drop of Flow Improver, and I'm just going to use this to cover all the metallics. So all this, these little details on the suit, on the arms, you know, anything around the model. I didn't want it to be too dark, so I thinned it down. If you want it darker, or yeah, if you want it darker, just don't thin it at all. And this is going to give us a really nice base to work up from. I wanted something really dark, but not like overpowering. And then like this, where I just messed this up, I just touch my brush to it, and it cleans it up for the most part. Now don't wash your entire model, I wouldn't recommend that, but just get the areas you want to be dark, so all the metallic areas, and then anything you might have missed that you're not completely satisfied with, this is a good place to do that. That's another reason you should work light, because you will have multiple opportunities to go back and just apply another layer. So I'm going to carry this along, and then we'll come back with the next step. Alrighty guys, so we've let our washes dry, so everything looks nice and dark. So now I'm going to take some Metal Color Dark Aluminum, and we're just going to kind of pick out highlights. Now the beauty of doing it this way is you've already done all your highlights, you've done everything else around the entire model, so you know where everything should sit at this point. So you're just going to pick out your highlight points. You're not going to paint the entire piece, you're just going to be highlighting. So working inside of those already defined details, picking out areas that you want to be brighter, and you know, just work your way across the model. Take your time, and you know, this is pretty much one of the final steps as far as if you're doing it the way I did and doing the armor and stuff. Now we still have some OSL and stuff to do. I'm going to do a little OSL with the lights, but yeah, go ahead.
Hello.
And there we go. So not a ton of work to be done on these. Another thing you can do is you can pick out like little pouches, or the clasps and stuff on pouches, extra little details, stuff that you maybe miss that first time around. But just take your time. This is, like I said, this is one of the final steps as far as what I'm doing is concerned. Now your process might be a little different. You might want to, I think this is, what's my frame rate? I messed up.
Is that because you're leaving?
No.
It is, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
Okay.
Something like that, I think.
I was gonna ask if you know where the crayons were,
I do not know where the crayons are.
or where any of the colored pencils are.
They should be downstairs, babe. Yep, so there we go. So just
Bye-bye.
bye-bye. Just highlight all those details that you want to be that silver color, and you know, just work it over. You want to pop out where everything's been darkened, but just in the highlight zones. Alright, so once you've got all your metallics done, the last thing we're going to do is we're going to start blocking in colors for OSL effects. So I'm using dark red just to create a nice base, and another thing that's nice about this is it stands out pretty strong against the teal. So it'll be easy for me to come back and see where I need to start putting highlights and stuff. I'm going to be doing most of my glow effects in orange, and the only real exception to this is plasma guns. So we've got my call here. I think that's his name, my leader. So we're doing all of his glow effects in this red. That includes little buttons. I might do a couple buttons in like green just to mix things up a little bit, but most of it is going to be in red. And that also includes the little screen on all the dude's arms. Now, in contrast to that, I'm going to use jade. We're going to start with regular jade for plasma. And what we're going to do for plasma is I'm just going to paint that jade on all these coils. Just to kind of get it started. And don't forget to do both sides of the gun. And then if you want to do like the little vents on the front, or if you want to paint like the actual front of the gun, you know, now's a good time to do that. But you just want to kind of start establishing the idea that this is the part of the gun, or what parts of the gun, or you know, whatever parts of your model are going to be glowing, because we're going to come in and we're going to start adding those glow effects. So there we go. I don't think well, I guess I will do the top vents too. I think that'll look cool. Yeah, so we're going to carry on, and then I'll show you how we make this effect glow. Alrighty, so for the case of our orange, in my case, I'm going to just focus all of my glow effects around the chest. So what I'm going to do is I'm taking burnt orange, I'm thinning it down into a glaze, and I'm just going to kind of apply it around this light. If you want, you could probably put just a little bit like here, but I don't think I'd go too much further than that. Just create enough of an impression that it's shining on the stomach a little bit. I'm not really pressed on making extreme glow effects for like the wrists and stuff. So what I would do here is I would take pure orange, or an unthinned or a less thin version, and I'm just going to grab like the entirety of the screen, and then we'll like create a glow effect within that. But another thing you want to do is you just want to grab a couple buttons. Don't grab every button, just grab a few. I would lean more towards buttons that you don't want to be red. So this guy's going to be orange. We'll grab like a couple of these. That way you can keep, as you start layering colors on, you can basically pick out more and more buttons. And then, you know, in your progressions and stuff like that, you'll have a bunch of different things to do. Another thing I'm going to do is with my axe, this is going to be like my last full base coat on the axe. We're going full burnt orange on this. And we, you know, that red really helps us push that orange where it needs to be. So, and then you can also grab the center of the chest thing. So look at that. Alright, so for our teal glow, what we're going to do is we're going to just take that same teal, we're going to thin that down into like a glaze, and I'm just going to kind of glaze this all around this, anywhere where there's these little vents. Now you want to definitely make sure you feather it out. So like how I've got here might be a little bit aggressive, but glaze that around there, glaze it underneath, glaze it around these vents on the front. And that will kind of start to sell your glow effect. The next step is going to be to take, I'm going to use a cool white color, so we're going to use white blue. And we're going to use that in conjunction with that jade. A little more jade on the palette. But really you only have to do this in like 2, maybe 3 layers. So the first one we're going to take and do like a 50-50-ish mix. Or you can use bright jade, you know, whatever. And what we're going to do here is we're going to do like an edge highlight, and we're just going to grab any edges near those glow effects. Now these ones are going to be a little tricky on the vents, but you know, just take your time, do better than I'm doing. I'll be able to tidy this up with a wash later, but I just kind of want this effect on the bottom edge of anything that's glowing. Another thing I want to do is I want to take that and I want to put that on the back end of these in the barrel, or on the end of the barrel, just to start that transition effect. And then, you know, try to run it on the bottom as best as you can. So I want to make the impression again that the glow is coming from inside the gun. So you want to highlight these little barrels too, or these little coils, I guess. Something like that. And then I'm going to try and get as much of that inside as I can, but leave that little stripe of the darker color. So something kind of like that. And then in the barrel, just kind of grab the edge. Then we're going to mix another version of this with more white. We don't want it to be pure, well, I'm not going full white, but you don't want it to be like just your white yet, because again, we're still doing the glow effect. So on the inside of these little vents here, pretty much you're just gonna kind of turn the model in a way that you can just kind of poke that corner a little bit. So just a little dot like that. And then we're going to get the very bottom of these. And then just a little kind of swipe along these coils. Then you want to take whatever your white is. So in my instance, it's going to be white blue. We're going to get most of it off the brush. And I just want that extreme kind of like the top here. And then you can even take that, water it down a whole bunch, and drop that in these areas. And that really kind of pushes that glow to the next level a little bit. So we gotta go ahead and do the back. But that's basically the same progression I'm gonna use. For the red stuff, I'm gonna keep layering up to orange. So we'll come back and do some more of that. But yeah, that's pretty much the gist of it. Alright, so I've gone ahead and just mixed my own orange, I guess. There's a lot of ways you can go about doing this. I think the smart way to do it would be to just take your last orange and just mix yellow into it progressively. Now what I'm going to do here is on the axe, I'm going to push this towards the inside of the axe. I'm going to try and glaze it a little bit. And if you mess this up, it's fine. You can always go back and forth. Red's a very forgiving color when it comes to its transparency and stuff. So it might be easier to work from a yellow to a red as opposed to like a red to a yellow. But I'm not going to go full like yellow on this. I just want to start pushing the oranges a little bit. And then I'm going to pick a couple more buttons to be yellow. I'm going to grab the center of the chest thing. And then we're going to do that edge highlight thing. We're just going to grab that bottom edge of the reflection down here, and then the reflection around the chest piece. Really all you gotta do is grab like a couple edges on the inside, as long as you get the bottom one. Oh man, I did all that off camera. As long as you get this bottom one here, that's really the most important one. But there's what I did with the axe. I just kind of glazed some of that orange up in there. If you want, you can start throwing a second layer on that. Kind of really push that home a little bit. And then we'll do like some glazes back and forth to kind of re-establish and reinforce that, just to make it look like it's glowing. Now this is going to take several layers. This isn't quite as simple as the blue, but it's not a difficult process either. It just takes a little more time. Alright, we're going to take that same mix from last time. We're just going to mix a little bit more yellow in. And I'm going to push that into the center of that light. And then we're going to glaze a little more onto this blade here. You want to push that color towards the inside because that's where the heat's coming from. So I'll show you another one. For this guy, we're just going to kind of push it to the center of his screen here. Center of this. I hope that last one was on camera. Oh, I need to stay with it. Center of the screen. Grab the inside of this one a little bit. And then for this guy, we're doing his little sunglass thing. We're just gonna grab just kind of this side over here, and then a teeny bit over here. And then the last step to this is going to be just some drops, like a little drop of white in there, and we're just going to hit that edge, and then we'll kind of pull it back and forth until we get it where we want it. So that's what that knife looks like once it's started to kind of dry a little bit. Yeah, something like that. So once you get that white edge on the inside, that's going to look awesome. Alright, so I kind of lied in my last step. You can do white, I think as far as the glows on the chest goes, I think I'm just going to stop at yellow. I think that yellow kind of creates enough of an impression that it's hot. Now for the weapons though, I am going to do like a little white glaze on the inside of these just to really drive that home. But like that yellow alone really kind of sells that effect some. So we're going to keep pushing this just a little bit further, and we'll be back. Alrighty, moment of truth to see how this works. Got a nice glaze going on here. We're just going to grab that inside edge. It might be a little too thin. There we go. Running that in there like that. I think that might not have been thin enough. But you know, just pop that in there like that, and that's going to create that strong glow effect. So if you're having trouble, just pop it in, make sure that it flows the way you want it to, and then I'm going to have to come back and do all this work again because I don't know what happened here, but maybe I can scrub some of this away before it dries. But this is very much the back and forth stage. You want to really be working this back and forth until you get it where you want it. So I'm going to keep messing with this, and then we'll see where it ends up in a little bit. So. Alright, so I think that's pretty much it. I've gone ahead, I've started painting the base a little bit. I'm not going to go over that in this video. I think this video is long enough. As for painting the remainder of the heads, I'm pretty much going to airbrush them, but I'm going to follow the same kind of principles that I did for like the skin here. You know, that's just the way I'm doing it. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this. I don't want it to run too much longer, so yeah, just keep messing around and figure out what you like. Have fun. So like I said, hopefully you enjoyed this, hopefully you learned a little something, or you take something from it. And if you enjoy this method, let me know. So I will see you guys with the next one. I don't know what I'm going to paint next, but probably go back to Monster Hunter for a little bit. So see you later.